Good morning. I hope it's going well with everyone. I'm so excited to be sharing this morning with you what God has been doing during this time of lockdown in my life. A few years ago, God challenged me to write down all the testimonies of my life in a book. So I got myself a book, and at the back of it, I make a list and the theme of each. Testimony with a number to each testimony, and then I bought myself some small stones and I wrote down the numbers of the testimonies that I've written down, and I threw it into a glass bottle that I have on my table. And during this time, God has told me to just sit down and remember the testimonies and to show me. And He showed me that I've forgotten about a few things, and so I've added quite a few more testimonies to my book. But I want to read you a scripture. It's from Joshua 4, verse 2. It says, Joshua said to the Lord said to Joshua, take 12 men from among the people, one man out of every tribe, and command them, take 12 stones out of the midst of the Jordan, from the place where the priest's feet stood firm. Carry them over with you and leave them at the place where you lodge tonight. Verse 6, that this may be a sign among you when your children ask in time to come, what do these stones mean to you? Then you shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord when it passed over the Jordan. The waters of Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be to the Israelites a memorial forever. Verse 9, and Joshua set up the 12 stones in the midst of the Jordan in the place where the feet of the priest bearing the ark of the covenant had stood, and they are there to this day. Verse 21, and he said to the Israelites, when your children ask their fathers in time to come, what do these stones mean? You shall let your children know, Israel came over this Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan for you until you passed over, as the Lord your God did to you to the Red Sea, which he dried up for us until we passed over, that all the peoples of the earth may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, and that you may reverence and fear the Lord your God forever. Chapter 5, verse 1 says, when all the kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan to the west, and all the kings of the Canaanites who were by the sea, heard that the Lord had dried up the waters of the Jordan before the Israelites until we had crossed over, their hearts melted, and there was no spirit in them anymore because of the Israelites. And when I read the scripture, this was one of the motivations for writing down my testimonies, and to just make for me a memorial of what God has done, so that I can remember. And this jar of stones is for me a memorial. It's constantly reminding me of there are testimonies that the Lord has done in my life, and I should go to them regularly to be lifted up, to be remembered, to be strengthened in my faith and my hope and my expectation, and in my steadfastness and my faithfulness towards Him. And it's also my defense. It is my the tool that God has given to me. It says there that they may know, these memorials and these stones, that they may know that the hand of the Lord is mighty, and that they may worship and fear the Lord forever. And so this morning I want to challenge you to remember the testimonies of the Lord in your life, and to go back on it and just read through it again. And I want to challenge the whole family to sit down maybe, and this is something that you maybe can do during this time of being together in a home, and is to sit down and to remember the testimonies that you have as a family, but also mom and dad, that you will share the testimonies that God has given you, which the children might not be aware of. But that you will share it with them, because that is how they get to know God, through you. And what a privilege it is for us to sit down as a family and to write down the things that God has done in our midst. And so this is a good exercise, or not an exercise, it's a good lifestyle to have in a family, to remember the things that God has done. Constantly when I minister, God often uses testimonies of my mom and dad's life that I can use to show forth that God is alive and that He's mighty. So I want you to, if you want to, go and write down the facts of the testimonies. Write it all down. What were the circumstances? What were your emotions? Yeah, everything about that. And then I want you to think. Let the children also think about this. What is the lesson that you can learn about God in this testimony? And what is the lesson that you can learn about yourself? Because the testimonies is a school that God took us through, a journey that led up to the moment of breakthrough and the moment of Him answering a prayer or came through for us. So, what is it that you can learn from God and from yourself and from life, or from other people? And then, as well, what is the testimony of the Lord? What have you learned of God in the testimony? But that is the testimony of the Lord, who God is. What can you learn of His character, of His sovereignty, of His heart, of His will? And those are the things that we need to hold on to, because He makes Himself known through our testimonies and what He has done for us. And we should cling to His heart and His character that we've discovered in those journeys and that led up to a testimony, because those are the key and the power of our testimony. So, this chapter 5, verse 1 reminds me of that scripture in Revelations 12 that speaks, that says, and they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. Now I just want to link it a little bit to this, the stones and the testimonies. If you remember what God has done, you will overcome, and it will become a weapon in your hand, because you have to cling to it, because that is who God is, and not to doubt Him, not to question Him, but to hold on to what He has done. So may you be blessed as a family during this time, and may you be blessed in the testimonies that God has given you so far. Be faithful with it, write it down, make a memorial of what God has done in your life, and constantly go back to that. It is encouraging me in this time, and may it do so for you as well. Be blessed, and may God's hand be upon you in such a special way that when we come out of this lockdown, we would be changed people, and we would take from this time what God has destined in His heart for us. So may we also prioritize what we value, and really see the things that we value. Is it truly what God values in our lives? So may you be blessed. Goodbye.